So you want to create a SharePoint list item inside a folder, and then boom, you realize it's not that easy. You add a create item action, and you're searching for that familiar option, folder path. But guess what? It's not there. That's because folder path only exists when you create files, not list items. So now what? That's exactly what I'm going to show you in this video. Stick around. The fix is not as simple as you may guess. Before we start, here's a warning. And this is a serious one. Do not use codes and tips in this video unless you watch it to the end to avoid surprises in the future. And you will know exactly what I mean by the time we get to the end of this video. So let's start with the two possible approaches to solve this problem, which is creating a list item inside a folder. As you know, create item can create the item inside the root folder. So if this one doesn't work, let's say if we can use a REST API that we can call from Power Automate, so hopefully it will insert a clean record inside the folder that we want. This API is available, and I put a direct link to this API in the video description. So we have the API details. We can simply use send an HTTP request to SharePoint to make that call and insert the item inside the folder that we need. This approach sometimes works. You heard me right. Sometimes. Not always, sometimes, and I will get into it by the end of this video. At the moment, let's say this is one of our approaches. Now, the second approach is to create item in the root folder, which is easy using create item. And after that, we move the item to the desired folder using move item action. Easy, right? We can start celebrating, but do not celebrate too early because move item, well, I kind of made that up. There is no such a thing. So to move an item from the root folder to your desired folder, again, you need to get back to the REST API, and again, you need to call send an HTTP request to SharePoint. So regardless, we need to use REST API. The only thing is that this API is very well documented and is very handy. This one has a little bit shady areas that we need to go around it, but it works perfectly. This API is faster with its own problems. This approach is slower when it comes to execution, but overall you may decide to pick this approach over this approach. So let's start with the first approach. We want to create an item directly inside the folder. Here is the link to this API. Just keep in mind that I made this API documentation for JavaScript developers, not for the Power Automate developers. But knowing a little bit of Power Automate, we can simply use this API inside Power Automate. So this is the SharePoint list that I have called list with folder. And inside this list, I created a folder called my folder. The idea is to create an item inside this folder from Power Automate. I already created a Power Automate flow called create list item in folder. It has just one trigger called item title. So the assumption is that the user enters the title for this item and it creates an item inside this folder with the title that the user provides. We may want to add another field called field 2, which is also text, but at the moment that's a second thing to worry about. So let me go back here and I want to call the API. I click on this plus and I can simply use SharePoint HTTP. Hopefully I will find this one on the top of the list and we are good to go. Now, we have the documentation here. It has the URL, but before using this, I need to go back here and do the Power Automate things in it, which is, first of all, picking up the site address. You can pick the site URL from here, or you can just copy and paste the URL here. That's not a big deal. Method, inside the API documentation, it says it's a post method. So great, we pick the post method. URI is the same thing that we have here. The only thing is that for the API inside Power Automate, considering that Power Automate already has the site URL, we don't need to use absolute URL. The relative URL works just fine. So I can simply pick the URL from API to the end. Copy and I just bring it back and I paste the URL here. As you can see, the API requires the list name. So I just remove this test. I go back to my SharePoint and I pick the list name. I can click on this, and this is the list name that I have. This is the actual title, not the internal name. So whatever you see is what you want to pass to this API. So now we need to get into advanced parameters. I click on Show All, Headers. Now, headers is a little bit tricky here because when we are using the Power Automate HTTP call to SharePoint, we don't need the authorization. It has been already done. We don't need the X request digest because it's already embedded in that action. All we need is just accept that I can stick it here. And I put the value right in front of it, which is this piece. And the second part of the header is going to be content type, which is exactly the same value. So I just stick this content type here, and I can go back here and get the second part of it and bring it back here. Now, as you can see, there are just two header elements, but I can click on this text mode and it gives me the JSON view. I just copy it and I want to keep it somewhere inside Notepad because I need it later for the next API call, and that's using exactly the same header. So this one is good. For the body, if I go back here, body is again very simple. The body, I just need to copy the entire thing here, bring it back here, and do the adjustments for the body. So just paste. We need a decoded URL to the folder that we want to copy the files in it. Let's go inside SharePoint. This is the folder that we want to copy the files to it. To get the clean URL or decoded URL, you can simply click on this. Do not click on the share or those things. They give you a weird URL that will not work there. So select this item, click on the details, and scroll down to the very bottom. Here is the path. Copy the direct link and bring it back to Power Automate. So we need to replace the entire folder with whatever the folder that we have. But this one has these %20, which is the replacement for a space. So this is one. The other one, we also replace it with space, and everything is good. Instead of replacing it manually, you can use the decode function inside Power Automate. That will do exactly the same thing. We have the path. Now we need to have the field name. The first field is title, and the value for the title is coming from our trigger, so I can pick it up from the dynamic content, which is item title. The rest, we just leave it there, and I just click on Save. Seems like it is done. Let's test it and see if it works. So click on Test. Manually, I click on Test. Title is going to be my title 1, and I click on Run Flow. Done. Seems like it is happy, but the main thing is that if the item is added to that folder. And yes, seems like it is done. Let's see if we can do exactly the same thing for field 2. I can come back here, edit. I can pick this API, scroll down, and I can make a copy of this item, add a comma because every field has to be separated from the other one. The field name for the second one, it is not the field that you see, it has to be the internal name. So if this name is field 2, and I'm not sure if the internal name is field 2, you can simply click on the list setting, find the field 2 in the columns, and this is the internal name that you have. As you can see in the URL, the last element that you see called field ID is the actual internal field name. So this name is the name that we need to use in our API. Okay, so field 2. And for the value, I don't want to put title. Let me add another parameter to the trigger, add an input, text. I call it field 2, and whatever the value that the user enters. I come back here, and I can add this field to here. Well, I'm not sure if we can add it. Let's click on dynamic content. And if you don't see field 2 here, don't worry, because it's not going to pick up the trigger parameters unless it is saved. So I need to save it. And then I come back here. I click on this guy right in between these 2 double quotes. I can click on this guy, and now you can see field 2. It is added. Let's save it and see if it works. Now let's test it this time. Test. And now we have 2 parameters, title 1, and I call it value for field 2. And I click on run flow, done, and item should be added. My folder, and you can see it has the title and the field 2. So this approach apparently works until it doesn't. Keep it right here. Let's go to the second approach. The second approach is a little bit weird, because we don't have clear documentation. Some people some time ago digged into the move item inside SharePoint, did the reverse engineering, and they ended up with an API like this, which is called API SP.MoveCopyUtil, and whatever that we have here that we will get into that. This is your header, and here is the body. Let's see if we can make this guy work. So for this, I created another flow. It is also empty. It just has 1 trigger, manually trigger a flow. And because we also have another field, let me add the second field here, and I call it field 2. We cannot save it because there is no other action, so I just add another item. So create item. So I pick my create item, and I pick my SharePoint site. I pick the list. And now, if I go to show all, without any API setting and all those things, I can say the title should come from item title. Field 2, we cannot pick it yet, but that's okay. We can save it. Now we know the problem here. Again, show all, field 2, and I pick the value from the trigger. Content type ID doesn't matter. By default, it's item. If you are very picky, you can pick item here. It doesn't make any difference for this case. I changed the name to create item in root folder. And this one works for sure. After the item is created, we want to move the item to the folder that we want. And for that, I can again use SharePoint, send an HTTP request to SharePoint, and we are good. We do exactly the same thing. YouTube demo method is going to be post. Just like that. The API that we want to use, I just need to take a copy of this. By the way, I have the copy of the entire API in the video description in case you want to use it. So the URI is going to be the post. This overwrite equals true is something to be careful about. I will get to it, but keep an eye on it because it may bite you in the end. Now, for the parameters, we can get everything from the other flow. The only thing is that the odata equals verbose. I just replace the last part with verbose. Save, we are good. Now the challenge goes with the body. Let me scroll down, show all, and we need to set the body. For the source, we need the full item URL. We have the site URL, and we need the item path. Item path is one of the parameters that create item returns. Site URL, we can simply hard-code it. So this is how it works. I just take a copy of this and paste it here. Site URL is something that we can go to SharePoint, copy, link address, bring it back here, and stick it instead of site URL. There we go. Now the item full path, that we don't have it here, I can remove it. And I can say insert the dynamic content. And if I search for the path, you will see we have full path of the item that is created. And that full path is the relative path from the root of the site. So if I say full path right after this YouTube demo, we are good. Just be careful, make sure you do not replace this /. So now we have the reference to the item that is just created. I scroll down. For the second one, we need to have the clean path to the target folder. You already know how to get that. I go back to the My folder, select. Again, I click on the details, scroll down to the bottom, copy path, bring it back here. So I just need to put this folder here. A bit of cleanup that we need to do, don't worry. Space and space. So list with folder, my folder. Now we need the item title for the new location. And that one is also very easy. So let me just remove this guy and I can click on insert dynamic content. And I need the title of the item that has been added directly. Again, this new designer removes that / let's put it back. All right, let's test it. Manually test, and I call the item title for 2 and field 2 for 2. And I click on run flow, done. Keep your fingers crossed. Beautiful, it worked. I go back to my SharePoint list. Inside that folder, I can just refresh and hopefully the item is here. Title 242, field 2 is here. Beautiful. So we have two working approaches. The second approach worked as expected without any problems. But here is the tiny issue. Remember that sometimes thingy? Let's get into it. When I say sometimes, it doesn't mean that sometimes it works and for some records it doesn't. Now imagine client comes here and says, you know what, Ali, for this list, I want to add another column and it's going to be a date time. Click on next and it's going to be expiry date. And I put it as one word so it is easy. Date time, I don't want to include time, and I click on save. So now the items that I add, they can have expiry date. Let's do it with the second approach that we have. So I can click on edit and under trigger, I can add a date field and I call it expiry date. I can simply save it. I can click on create item. Now, if I click on show all, I see the expiry date and I can simply pick the expiry date from the trigger, save, and it should work as expected without any issues. Manually test something with date, field 2, something with date. Let me use it for approach 2. And expiry date, it can be any date that we pick. I click on run flow, done. And everything is working happily ever after. I can click on the YouTube demo list and I can refresh it. And you will see I have something here with the expiry date. Now, if there is a new field coming, and for the first approach that we implemented, first of all, it's not something visual. Now I need to get back to the details of this HTTP request. Then I need to go here and I need to add something else here. Control V. Gosh, I hate it. Okay, so instead of field 2, I have expiry date. And instead of field 2, here, I want to insert the expiry date. Oh, I don't have it here yet. So it's going to be date, expiry date, save. I bring it back here, scroll down, and for the expiry date, I can simply get it from this expiry date. Save, and let's say test. Everything is good. We added the comma here. We are good, right? Manually test something, and I pick an expiry date, whatever that is. And I click on run flow, and I click on done. Hey, it worked. So let's go here and see if I can refresh it. It didn't do anything. It doesn't give you error. It doesn't insert the record. It doesn't do the job simply because your date format is not correct. I spent quite a lot of time to figure out what date this API likes. And that's not the point that I want to dig into it. I want to tell you every new data type requires you to come here with this approach and make some changes in the API call. And this is not your Power Automate format and rules anymore. Now you have to comply the API rules. While with the second approach, whatever you do here is Power Automate. Only the move that does not involve any parameters or any fields is going to stay there. And whatever you do with the record, more fields, different data types, it's not going to affect your API calls. So updates to this flow is going to be extremely easy. Now, which approach do you pick? This one or this one? Oh, by the way, this approach is not perfect either. So let me come back here and show you what the issue is here. Now, remember this overwrite true that I told you about? It means that if you insert a new item, that the title is exactly the same as the title that is already there, it's going to go there and overwrite it. Let me give you an example. For example, this my title. I just get a copy of this. I go back here and I want to test the approach 2. Test, manual, test. And I use the exact title. Field 2 is going to be should overwrite. And whatever the date, it doesn't really matter anymore. I click on run flow and I say it is done. So apparently it does the job, but when I go back to my SharePoint and I refresh it, yay, it created a new record. But here is the thing. If you just have one field and what you enter exactly matches this item, it will overwrite without warning. On the same note, if you come back here and if you set this value to false, if it finds the exact match, it doesn't overwrite, but it throws an error that you may need to handle. Overall, I'd rather pick this approach than this one. It is faster to run, but not to develop. You may spend hours trying to figure out the error. Most of the time, your SharePoint doesn't have only 2-3 fields. If you're dealing with 20-30 fields sometimes, and when that happens, imagine how crazy this API call gets and how difficult it is to troubleshoot. Now in the comments below, you tell me which approach would you pick. All right. I personally pick option 2, which is creating the item in the root folder and then moving it to your desired folder all day, every day. But I think there is a third option, and that is asking Microsoft to add that folder path to create item action, or actually adding an action called move item to Power Automate. I leave the rest to you. If you enjoyed this video, show me by pushing the like button, and if you like the style of my videos, a tap on subscribe button will make my day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon in the next video.